This is the Essex Lanes 200km bye-bye Bungalow Audax. It's organised by the Shaftesbury Cycling Club. And it's on a very interesting route, actually, because it's 3 loops. The first of 100km and then 2 50km loops, which is, in a way, quite good, because although you don't get to see quite as much of the countryside, you don't get to go as far, you do get to get back to the headquarters each time at the end of each of the loops, so you can have a bit of a break and a bit of a snack. And this one was at the Shaftesbury Club Hut. The club huts have been in use for a long time as any of us can remember, really, and they're gradually being sold off, going out of use now. And this was the last event to be held at the Shaftesbury Hut. I've ridden loads of events from there, road races, time trials, as well as audaxes, and they'll be really missed. Anyway, they usually start fairly early, audaxes. 200km is what's called the ordinary distance, what this one is. And it takes basically a day, so the daylight bit of a day at least. So you're heading off at 8 a.m. and into the early morning sun. So obviously we were heading broadly east early on, and this bit of road will be really familiar to anybody who cycles in this area, or at least who does club cycling. The motorway bridge, the railway bridge, they're very, very familiar sights to people. Anyway, after a few kilometres I realised that I'd been really stupid, as usual, and I'd left my brevet card at the headquarters lying on a chair, and it meant that basically I had no way of recording the information controls, which you need to do. You need to have evidence that you've been at various places. So I had to team up with someone, and the people I was with early on didn't look as though they were going to be the right ones. So I waited and luckily got with someone else who was a really good ride companion for the entire day. Really enjoyed riding with him. And after a bit we came across this. What's that? Well, if you have a look in the red circle, you'll see that there is a deer just disappearing on the side of the road. We were lucky because we saw a complete herd of deer, I suppose there were about 6 or 7, so not a big one, running across the road in front of us. And I didn't have the camera running, as usual. So I turned it on as fast as I could, and I thought that it would have been in time to have got that one. And as you can see, it was literally just the first frame that had the ears and bottom and tail of the deer disappearing into the hedge. But it was a real shame because it bounced across the road right in front of us, and it was a fantastic sight, as were they all, but that one was very close. Audaxes use a real variety of roads, and the reason we saw those deer was we were on a road that there's virtually nothing on apart from a cat, and as you can see, it's fairly rustic. It's actually not far from where I live, and I don't tend to use it for this reason. It is a bit mucky. Some of the roads on the route on the 28th were much busier, bigger roads, and it's nice to get the variety, but yeah. So this is near Beasley End, much more civilised sort of road, but a lot fewer deer. As you can see, it was an absolutely glorious day with beautiful blue skies. And this is coming into Kelvedon, where you're getting into much busier roads. You're near the A12 here, you're near the railway station. This used to be part of my ride to work actually when I was teaching, and it was always an interesting bit of road to ride because you got all the people who were late going to work and were about to miss their train, and their driving isn't necessarily that good when that's the case, so it used to be a bit where I would take special care. Anyway, there was an information control here, so this is where that brevet card comes in, and the organiser of this particular event evidently likes post boxes, and so a lot of them were collection times from post boxes. If you were like me and your parents back in the 1970s used to do car treasure hunts, audaxes are a bit like that. And that's one of the things I like about them, because they are kind of 50 years in the past, in the nicest possible way. And then this is another information control, not a post box this time. This time it's a village sign, Great Lees, and it's cricket bat. And then completing the 100km loop, we were back at Ugley, back to the Shaftesbury Club Hut. And it was a little bit early for lunch really, because those times on there are UTC, but it was 11:45, so it was still quite an early lunch. But you've worked up an appetite if you've ridden 100km, and so we decided to have our lunch at that point. And at least we were sort of first-ish in the queue.
Oh yeah.
The huts will be really missed, I think, certainly by my generation of cyclists. They've been a focal point for a lot of events, and they're a chance to meet up and have a chat, and to have an overnight in the case of riders from those clubs very often. It's a shame to see them go, but it's a reflection of the way the world changes and the way people engage with cycling has changed. So it's inevitable, I think. Anyway, we were soon off after our lunch for the second of those loops.
Right.
And this one was heading out towards the west. Roads I don't use quite as much. A little bit outside my normal day's range when you get to this point. And that's a good thing. One of the nice things about Audax is that if you're adventurous, at least, you're going to get to see bits of the country that you wouldn't otherwise get to see. And it's also great, I think, if you can team up with somebody different and ride with them during the day. And as I say, I was very lucky here. You need to be of about the right pace, because if you're not, it's probably not going to be that pleasant for either of you, to be absolutely honest. During the summer, I rode the National 12-Hour Time Trial Championships. Now, time trials are very different, and obviously a 12-hour time trial is a long way. I did 246 miles, or miles on time trials, kilometres in Audax, just to confuse things. So about 400 kilometres, so about double the distance that we did for this one. And in a time trial, you're not going to stop. You're just riding without any real breaks. I think I stopped for less than 10 minutes during the whole thing, because you do need to have, at least when you're my age, a bit of a wee break, and you do need to stop for a little bit of food. But you're not stopping for a meal, you're just stopping to stuff something in your face, basically. Audax is very different, so you take the breaks whenever you want in Audax. It's not about going fast, and that's why I haven't put speed metrics or power metrics on this video. And it doesn't take as much out of you. So, okay, it was half the distance anyway, but a 200 kilometre Audax you can go out and ride again the following day. The 12-hour time trial I was still recovering weeks later, and I'm still not sure that I'm quite back there yet. My top end power still isn't back. Anyway, here we are approaching the club huts again from the opposite direction this time, coming under the M11 there. Again, a familiar bit of road to anybody who's ridden from the huts, which will be most cyclists in East Anglia and Essex and North London. And back to the hut. And this time it was just a much shorter break, just a snack bar. I think I might have had another cup of coffee. You can never have too much coffee. And then back off again. And this time we're heading down towards the south, down towards Stansted Airport and through the village of Elsenham. And these are wonderful old gates, I always think, but they're also unfortunately always closed. And for Audax, as I say, it doesn't really matter.
Near Bury St Edmunds, just
Soon off, heading down past the airport, through all the traffic. Not much in Elsenham though. This is Hatfield Broad Oak. Now, when you've not done 170 kilometres, you'd probably not have that much difficulty in identifying and locating the post box. We had done that sort of distance by this point, and we couldn't. Now, there was a bit of a clue in the post office which is stuck on the corner, but I didn't notice it. My colleague eventually did, and eventually we found it, but of course there was a car parked right across the front of the post box, so it wasn't as obvious as it might possibly have been. That's my excuse anyway.
yes. Oh yes.
Looks quite an historic post box actually.
2:30 PM.
Soon off again. And the end's now obviously hoving into sight really. down at the most southerly point, about to turn west. And another crossing. Gates are nowhere near as rustic on this one, I have to say. Much less attractive and closed for a lot longer. We managed to time it to catch 3 trains, which were spaced obviously just close enough to not open the gates in between. So we did have a bit of a wait, but it's a chance for a chat and a drink and a quick snack. Off again and heading north and into some really rustic lanes, but very, very attractive and lovely cycling country with very little traffic in them, especially for that area, which is quite a busy area, obviously being around the airport. Although I really enjoy audaxes, I have to say that getting to 10 kilometres to go is usually fairly welcome. I've normally pretty much had enough by 190 kilometres, and even on a day like this, it's nice to feel the end is in sight. But as I say, some of these lanes were just a little beaten, and this particular bit was pretty broken up and covered with the remains, and we both of us hit fairly large stones lying in the road at this point and got bounced around a little bit. So it was quite exciting, that bit of road. This is a fairly boring bit of the B1383, which is the old A11. Still pretty busy. And the reason I've put it on here, as you'll probably guess, is we're just coming up to 200 kilometres, and there it is. Most audaxes are just slightly over because you have to prove you've done the distance. So if you clip a few corners and you ended up with 199.9, you'd be quite annoyed and get disqualified probably. And so they're usually just a little bit over 200k. Sometimes they're up to 210 kilometres. This is the old Checkers pub. Sadly no longer open, I don't think. I suspect quite a few cyclists have enjoyed a beer there down the years. Back under that bridge for one last time to finish the ride. Really enjoyable day, made all the better by having a great companion, but brilliantly organised event. And Audax, like most cycling events of whatever type, is very, very much an amateur game, and so it relies on people giving up their time and making a huge effort to organise enjoyable events, and it really is greatly appreciated. And not just the organiser, of course, but the people who give up their time to go and lay on the refreshments and so on. You don't have marshals in audaxes because you don't need them. The whole point is you're navigating your way around, and you're responsible for your behaviour on the road. Anyway, that's probably my last time riding up to the Shaftesbury CC Club. Up the next time I see it, it will probably be under development, I suspect. Lots of very happy memories there. So sad to see it go, but I'm glad I got to do this one last event from there. Anyway, congratulations for making it to the end. That's you rather than me in the Audax, obviously you with the video. and we had just one last chance for a little chat and another coffee.
A lot more stopping there, less riding. Quite a lot of sea up there.
And the Keswick pencil, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pencil,
Yeah, it did go that
the world's biggest pencil.
and